What's up, everyone? Shane from the Golden Hour Film Podcast here. Just a quick video to myself and how you're doing on the channel.
Well, it's Letterboxd Wrapped. It's the most important time of the year. Let's get on into it.
The most watched actor from myself this year was Humphrey Bogart. Anyone who kind of saw my Humphrey Bogart video from a few weeks ago at this stage will probably realise that I watched a ton of Humphrey Bogart films towards the end of the year. Yeah, great actor. He's always been one of my favourite American actors. And there's a lot of films, underrated films, I think, that I was able to see as a result of kind of getting that video done. Probably, if it was to name two, I'd say High Sierra is probably the first breakout role, the first leading role where people would begin to take Bogart seriously as a leading man. And obviously then we know The Maltese Falcon came out a few months after that, and then Bob's your Uncle after that, like Casablanca, etc., etc. Like, he was arguably the American leading man of the 40s and early 50s.
So this year I watched 275 films, admittedly low year for me, I'll be honest. I was pretty crazy busy with work towards the end of the year, and it'll make sense in the graph as well, I'm sure. But yeah, 275 for last year. The most watched actor was Jimmy Stewart, which makes perfect sense, to be honest. I watched, I think, 6 of his films last year. I'll have to double check that, but I think 6. He was on the podcast quite a bit, so that makes sense. And as well, I watched a couple that I hadn't seen before. I watched Harvey for the first time. It was actually very good. I watched Winchester 73, which was very good. I watched Anatomy of a Murder, which is incredible. And yeah, Jimmy Stewart was my most watched actor, so that, if I'm honest, that makes perfect sense, as does obviously my most watched director, Alfred Hitchcock. We covered all of his 1940s films and Psycho on the podcast this year, well, last year, so yeah, that makes perfect sense as well.
My most watched director from last year was, unsurprisingly, Alfred Hitchcock. Obviously, on the podcast, we did do the complete 1940s Hitchcock arc, which is, I think, 11 or 12 films at least. So, yeah, that obviously takes a good chunk of it. I did watch 29 Hitchcock films last year, all in though. So, a good few of those are rewatches. Dial M for Murder has always been one of my favourite thrillers, really, of all time, let alone Hitchcock films. Notorious was a rewatch, and I absolutely adore that film. Rebecca was the first time I saw Rebecca, and obviously the very first episode of the podcast, so it holds a bit of a special place in mine and Harry's hearts as well. But that's a really great kind of period drama, something that Hitchcock wouldn't usually get into too often. But yeah, I think I was pretty much blown away. It's the only film of his that won Best Picture, as we know. And I think it was well worth it, to be honest. I was really impressed by that film. So there are kind of a few recommendations that I think people would really enjoy from Alfred Hitchcock, who again was my most watched director from last year.
Yeah, highly rated 2024 films. This is going to out me a bit, but it's kind of a mistake on their part, because I did change the rating, so I don't know why it's still there. Obviously, Dune Part 2 is there, Challengers is there, and Deadpool and Wolverine is there. Call me crazy, I gave it 4.5 stars the first time I watched it. I'm a Deadpool stan because it was the only comics that I read as a kid. I did then go back and drop it to 4 stars, which some of you will probably still say is insanely high for the movie. I don't care, I really don't. But yeah, interesting that they didn't just go off my 2024 like ranking list to show my favorites, and also kind of weird that they didn't do 4 movies. I wonder why they did 3. It's not very Letterboxd of them.
As far as 2024 films went, the highest rated films that I had up were Dune Part 2, incredible blockbuster filmmaking from Denis Villeneuve. Yeah, like, I really enjoyed the first Dune film, and this is pretty much on a par with that, I think. Really, really impressive stuff visually, and like, I'm not massive into my sci-fi, but it's, even though it's such dense mythology, he manages to make it like really accessible, I think, for your more mainstream audience, and I'd include myself in that. So great stuff there from Denis Villeneuve. Furiosa, from George Miller, obviously the prequel to Mad Max Fury Road, where we see Furiosa played this time by Anya Taylor-Joy. I think I was really riveted by this film. Again, visually, George Miller does some absolutely insane things pretty much throughout his career, and especially in Furiosa. I actually really enjoyed that film. Probably, I think generally it got good reception. Most people will probably say it's not on the level of Fury Road, but you can understand. But for me, I probably enjoyed it for different reasons. I enjoyed it nearly as much as Fury Road. I really, really loved that film. I was properly blown away by it. Challengers is another film that I really loved, from Luca Guadagnino. Obviously starring Zendaya, Mike Feist, Josh O'Connor. So pretty much a tennis, thriller, romantic, comedy. It's all this mishmash blending of genres, but somehow it works. And the score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross is absolutely exhilarating. Like, walking out the cinema, I was absolutely on cloud nine. Felt like I could run through a brick wall. So brilliant stuff there from that score, and again, really enjoyable film. But the one film that I did want to mention, because I feel like it hasn't really gotten as much plaudits as I think it should, maybe just not enough people have seen it, in my opinion. A Different Man, from, I think the director's called Adam Schimberg, who was the first film of his I've seen, starring Adam Pearson and Sebastian Stan. This is absolutely incredible. If you've seen The Substance, it's a very similar film to that. It's all about how we view ourselves and how kind of body dysmorphia deals with things like this. And yeah, it's kind of how we view ourselves, really. And again, just because we have a bad opinion of ourselves doesn't necessarily mean that other people are going to. If you can have other positive aspects to your personality, like people aren't necessarily thinking along the same lines as you are. So I mean, it's very, very funny, riotously funny, brilliant screenplay, and two amazing performances, particularly from Sebastian Stan and Adam Pearson as well, who's a British guy who does suffer from this, and he's not necessarily a professional actor either, so makes it even more impressive.
A couple of milestones. The first film I watched was Alun Aun Metra, or The Astronomer's Dream. I don't know why I decided to watch a Georges Méliès silent film on the 1st of January last year, but I did. And then my last watch was Vengeance Most Fell, which is fantastic. And then it's got like all the ones in the 50s. So for 50th, I treated myself to Sharknado 2. My 100th film was the Bray Wyatt documentary, Becoming Immortal. 150th, funnily enough, was Harvey, that Jimmy Stewart film. 200th was one of the Final Destinations. I cannot tell by the picture which one it is. And then my 250th film was Rafifi, which I've talked about plenty of times on the podcast before. It is incredible, one of the best heist films ever made. My most watched theme was terrifying, haunted and supernatural horror. Yeah, the first ones that came to mind were Rosemary's Baby, The Omen and Blair Witch, but there's a bunch of them here. I Know What You Did Last Summer, not very good. The Halloween films, obviously all the Universal monster movies we covered, Only Baba, 1998 Psycho. Yeah, a real who's who of films. Wait Until Dark as well, a really underrated Audrey Hepburn thriller.
As far as underrated films, then I just wanted to kind of mention, I did like Rose Glass's Love Lies Bleeding, starring Kristen Stewart. Great actress, absolutely phenomenal actress, one of my favourite actresses. And again, this is like a kind of I think it's set in the 80s, but it's again this kind of mishmash of genres. Pretty much a gangster thriller, but it's also like a romantic comedy in there. It's a weird blending of genres. I really love when a film takes big swings like that, and really, in my opinion, did knock it out of the park. And a couple of Irish films actually that I wanted to mention as well. Firstly, Kneecap, starring Kneecap, the band, the Irish language rapper bands. Again, it's pretty much based on their story, and yeah, just absolutely loved it. The lads can do no wrong as far as I'm concerned. And Cillian Murphy's Small Things Like These, an independent drama based on obviously anyone who knows about the Magdalen laundries here in Ireland, that went on for decades. Pretty shameful stuff in our country's history, but he's absolutely amazing in that film. Very, very internal, reserved, downbeat performance, but it's pretty heartbreaking, and I just wanted to mention that as well. As far as my most watched genre, I did watch a lot of noirs towards the end of the year. I also watched a lot of thrillers because I just love a good thriller, to be honest. And comedy, like nothing like a good comedy to kind of pick you up when you're feeling a bit blue, a bit down, whatever.
My top 20 films of 2024, admittedly, I am miles behind on 2024 releases, so this will look totally different by the end of the month, I reckon. But yeah, just a few good ones that I would recommend. Obviously, the new Nosferatu is fantastic. A Different Man is amazing. I really liked Late Night with the Devil. Obviously, it's a controversial film, but I really liked it. Kneecap is amazing. Anora is amazing. Super Man, the Christopher Reeve documentary, is fantastic. Longlegs is really good. I really liked Paddington in Peru, believe it or not, mainly because of the ending. Monkey Man, Alien Romulus, there's loads of good films that came out last year. Trap, but yeah, I am so far behind on 2024 releases, so forgive me if I didn't mention your favourite there, because it's probably because I actually just haven't seen it yet. So yeah, I watched 8 Jimmy Stewart films, actually, not 6. I watched 6 Cary Grant films, 6 Paul Newman films, and 6 Henry Fonda films. That's my top 4. Ingrid Bergman is 5th with 5 films, in case you were wondering. And yeah, as far as directors go, it's Hitchcock on 18 films, which is insane. Billy Wilder on 5, and then a bunch of directors on 3. So yeah, that was my Letterboxd wrapped. I can go through a few more. The highest average film I watched was 12 Angry Men, which we covered on the podcast. The lowest was Madam Web, which sucked. The most obscure film I watched last year was Southern Discomfort Wrestling on the Indie Circuit, which is a really weird wrestling independent documentary. And the oldest film I actually watched Sally Gardner at a Gallop, which is just that horse moving. So yeah, that's the oldest film I watched. Films I rated higher than average. We got The Nice Guys, Halloween 3, Dazed and Confused is amazing, Plain Soleil is amazing, Peeping Tom, and of course Deadpool and Wolverine. And no surprises here. Films that I rated lower than average. Under Capricorn, which if you saw the podcast episode you would know that I hated. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which if you saw the podcast episode you would know that I hated. Hitchcock, the Anthony Hopkins film, thought it sucked. Julius Caesar with Marlon Brando bored me to tears. I did not like Sidney Lumet's Murder in the Orient Express. I gave it 2 stars. Shoot me. And I also gave The Bishop's Wife 2 stars. I don't care. I did not like that movie at all. I was so bored. I didn't like any of the characters.
I did watch 70 films from my Letterboxd watch list, which is good going, I think. I was actually surprised it was that many. But I also added 146 films, so it's like a hydra. I can get one down, but then 2 or 3 knock up at the same time. So yeah, it's constantly expanding my watch list. There's a few people on Letterboxd that I do follow and that I really admire, and like their tastes are quite aligned with mine. So as soon as I see a film from them, in a lot of cases I'll just instantly add it to my watch list, because when I click into it and I read up about it, it's like, oh yeah, it actually really seems like in my bag. So there's 2 or 3 people who are just constantly generating my watch list pretty much by themselves in a lot of cases. As far as why I watched what I watched, like I think a lot of it is, leaving aside the podcast, so obviously I watched a lot of stuff for the podcast, and then obviously the short videos they do. But leaving all that stuff aside, I think it's probably 2 things. One, to catch up on stuff that I haven't seen, that I've been meaning to see for a long time. I'm sure everyone is in that ballpark. And then also just mood. You might be in the mood for like a suspenseful thriller. You might be in the mood for a laugh out loud comedy. You might be in the mood for a romantic comedy. You know, all these kind of things. I think everyone again is in the same boat, where it's like your kind of mood dictates what you're in the mood for on any given day. So that's along those lines.
And yeah, for this year, definitely in January, I've already watched far more Asian cinema, because I felt like I was kind of lacking on it last year. I was really good for 2023, but yeah, 2024, I just feel like I watched old American movies the whole year. So yeah, I've already watched a bunch of Hong Kong and South Korean films, and I'm gonna watch a good few Japanese films now as well soon. Besides that, yeah, that's the aim. Obviously, watch the episodes. Watch the films for the episodes of the podcast, which will be good fun. There's a few that we have lined up that I've never seen before, so I'm excited for them in particular. But yeah, as far as my own watching habits goes, it'll probably consist of a lot of Asian cinema, and maybe a good few American films that I just haven't seen yet that I need to check off the list, because there's a bunch of like American classics or like recent classics that I just haven't gotten around to. And of course, catching up on 2024. I'm watching as many 2025 films that are supposedly good as I can, because I'm not much of a hate watcher. I know I watched Madam Web, but that was just morbid curiosity, if anything. I do tend to try and watch a new movie, should I say, if I think it's good, unless it's meant to be really bad and it's got like a funny premise or something, or like a terrible performance that's like iconic, then I'm sold, you know. Sharknado, I'm there. But yeah, that's the goal for this year anyway.
And just to wrap things up here, in 2025, there are a few directors that I really want to kind of get into and really explore their work a lot more. Howard Hawks, I'm in the middle of going through his filmography, and I'm really impressed so far. I don't think there's been a bad film so far, to be honest, although I'm sure there will be. It's inevitable. Fritz Lang is another director from, obviously, he started off in the silent era, big influence on German Expressionism. And I want to get into, because obviously he went to Hollywood then, and he made a lot of Hollywood films as well, to a lot of acclaim. I want to get into his stuff. He's someone whose work that I've seen, the few films that I have seen of his, have blown me away. Akira Kurosawa, I've only seen a couple of his films, which is crazy, I know, but I do want to really get into his stuff, because I just think from what I've seen, the guy's a genius. And finally, Joseph L. Mankiewicz, because I think he kind of similar to my boy Billy Wilder. I know I keep banging on about Billy Wilder, but he has a way of kind of blending, again, this kind of thing I've been talking about throughout this video, blending genres. Kind of, he did a lot of musical stuff, he did a lot of comedies, obviously a lot of dramas, a lot of thrillers. He has this way of blending and mishmashing genres and really still managing to pull it off, which again I really admire. I really love when a film takes a big swing like that. So yeah, that's just a quick video from myself. I think Harry's going to have his as well, so I think we're going to put this out. I'm sure Harry has already talked about it, but we're going to put this out and just kind of update people as to our Letterboxd. And yeah, that's my Letterboxd in 2024. So thanks for watching this, everyone, and check out the podcast episode from last week, City Lights, starring and directed by Charlie Chaplin, and obviously future podcast episodes. So yeah, thanks for watching.
And yeah, thank you very much, and I'll see you all next year for next year's Letterboxd Wrapped. So long.